Welcome to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. Later in the show, Jesse Mike will tell us about the Diné Native Plants Program, a new program for the Navajo Natural Heritage Program under the Navajo Nation Department of Fish and Wildlife.
I'm Susan Levy, and in the studio with us today is Kimberly Dutcher, and she's with Direct Relief, and she's the Government Relations Advisor. So Direct Relief is a humanitarian aid organization, and I know they're active in all 50 states with more than 80 countries, with a mission to improve the health and lives of people affected by poverty or emergencies, without regard to politics, religion, or ability to pay, which I think is pretty amazing. So welcome to the studio, Kimberly. We're so excited that you're here.
Hi, Susan. I'm so excited to be here. Let me tell you a little bit about myself and how I got to be at Direct Relief. And for my Navajo relatives out there, listening out there today, I'll introduce myself in our language. She'e Kimberly Dutcher Yinishe, Tutnasani Nishle, Dobelagana Bashichin, Naka Diné Edashche, Dobelagana Dashanale, Fort Defiance Da Nasha. My name's Kimberly Dutcher. I am Navajo, and I'm from the community of Fort Defiance in Arizona. And I've been a tribal attorney for most of my career. I've represented tribes in Arizona, and most recently, I was the Deputy Attorney General for the Navajo Nation from 2019 to 2023. And the way I got to Direct Relief was not intentional. It was really a series of events. Part of my duties while I was Deputy Attorney General was to secure COVID aid and resources to fight the pandemic. I was part of our humanitarian response team, and it was in this capacity that I got to meet a lot of organizations such as Direct Relief. And this was in the early days of the pandemic, and we sent a lot of people home, and me and the Attorney General were the only ones in the office. And the phone rang one day, and I picked it up. And these folks on the other end said, "Hey, Navajo Nation, how can we help you?" And I had literally a sheet of supplies and equipment that we needed, respirators, ventilators, hospital gowns, masks, things like that. And I read off the list. And the other person on the other side of the phone said, "Well, I'm from Direct Relief, and we can ship you these supplies, and you should get them by the end of the week." And I'm like, great, because we were really needing these things, and it was a pretty intense time. Well, the next day he called me back and he said, "We're not going to ship these things to you because we really want to bring them to you. Can we come and bring them out?" And I said, "Sure, but you got to be out of here by 6 o'clock p.m. because we have a curfew." So I really did not know if he was going to do what he said he was going to do, but I was pleasantly surprised when that Friday he showed up. He showed up in a big truck, and with these supplies, and also with additional supplies for the Fort Defiance Hospital. So there were two individuals from Direct Relief that came, and one of them was their attorney. And because he was an attorney and I'm an attorney, we said, why are attorneys in this business? But that was the beginning of what has become a really great relationship. And Direct Relief did what they said they were going to do. They helped the Navajo Nation in one of its greatest times of need. And eventually they helped us with not only medical supplies, but with grants so that our Department of Health could use those resources in the ways that they saw fit to best combat the pandemic. So after my term as Deputy Attorney General was over, Direct Relief reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to help us build our tribal program? We know that there are a lot of needs in Indian country, and we need some help to build relationships and to serve the people out there." And I thought about this a great deal because it was a big change for me. Obviously, I've had a legal career for a long time. But one of the things that really steered my decision was a New York Times article that came out earlier in August of 2022, or maybe it was 2023, and that because of the effects of COVID-19, life expectancy for Native people has decreased by 7 years. And this was shocking and upsetting to me. So knowing that information really influenced my decision to do something different and to really help Native people all over the country.
That's pretty amazing. I know that I think the Navajo Nation did such a great job handling COVID. I know it was hard. I can't even imagine. I know being down here and the things that happened in the Metro Phoenix area and having resources, and you all didn't have access to those resources.
Yes.
And making that decision and direct relief actually coming to the aid and helping you and the community, and then your decision to move forward and to help all of Indian country. I think that's like inspirational and important and critical. I don't know.
Thank you. Well, it wasn't hard to do. It's an amazing organization. And when, my work isn't in the medical field, I had never heard of them. But when I learned that they've been doing this all over the world and the U.S. for 76 years, it was a pretty easy, it became an easier decision to make.
When I first met you, when you had reached out and we had talked about direct relief, like I had never heard of them either. Mm-hmm. And, what could they do for we serve the urban Native community and, how all could you support the work that we do and other groups like ours. But, okay, so I'm going to back up and say,
sure.
So what is direct relief?
Well, Direct Relief is a 76-year-old humanitarian nonprofit organization whose mission is really to help people in need and at risk to access care and to realize their inherent potential. Essentially, Direct Relief is a support organization that equips health professionals around the world with life-saving medical resources. And we do this in a couple different ways. And I can talk about that now, or do you want to know more?
Well, you said they're a nonprofit.
Yes.
So they help anybody and everybody throughout the world that, if there's a natural disaster or a pandemic or whatever it might be, right?
So, we do work all over the world in countries that have the most needs. So we're not, for example, going to be working in, Germany, who has plenty of resources, right, and they can address these things. We work with, countries that, have the need, and in the U.S., but we do this through a network of partners. So we primarily partner with community health centers and free clinics that help those who have the need. So we don't work, for example, with for-profit institutions because they have the resources.
Right.
So, for example, let's take this week. We have Hurricane Ernesto going through the Caribbean, just hit Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, we have a network of clinics that we work with there, and we contact them and we say, how can we help? And they let us know what they need. And this brings me to one of our programs I want to tell you about, which is Power for Health. When Hurricane Maria struck Puerto Rico in 2017 and virtually destroyed the electrical grid out there, when we asked, how can we help? They kept saying, we need power, because folks were without power there for months. And in fact, I just heard the other day that some folks didn't even have power for a year. So for the health clinics, not having power for a significant amount of time not just affects the health clinics, it affects the whole population. So the medicines go to waste that have to be cold stored,
right,
the equipment can't be run, and people don't get the care that they need. So, and this is particularly important because the free and charitable clinics, nonprofit clinics, serve those that can't get care, serve those people that can't get care in other places. So these folks are particularly vulnerable. So in response to our partners in Puerto Rico's request for power, we went to our donors and they supplied solar panels and solar batteries, backup batteries, to power these health clinics. And we wound up powering 16 health clinics, a couple fire stations, and several water pumps because access to water was also a problem there. And that's where the Power for Health initiative was born, just out of that. It wasn't something planned. It was really out of necessity. But since then, we've seen increasingly more storms resulting in loss of power in the United States. And as I mentioned, Puerto Rico got hit again. And sometimes it's not hurricanes, it's wildfires, it's monsoon, it's different climate-related events. And we started seeing the nexus between availability of power and the provision of health care. they're inseparable now. So we've taken for granted, I think, the availability of electricity. We think it's always going to be there, but it isn't. So Direct Relief began its Power for Health initiative, and we have several sites in the U.S. But more recently, we've started a tribal program, and we're presently working with 6 tribes, 2 here in Arizona, one of which is Native Health. We're very happy about that partnership. 1 in Alaska, 1 in Utah, 1 in Montana, and 1 in Louisiana. And Direct Relief has invested $10 million in this initial, it's their initial investment. And we are banking on success for this initiative, and we want to see this grow because we know there's a need in Indian country for this. We know the need is great because Native people often don't have many options when it comes to health care. We rely on the Indian Health Service. We rely on several clinics, and these clinics are few and far between, particularly in non-urban areas and rural areas. We also know, our research has told us, that the electrical grid in Indian country is often aged and insufficient. So we've got more vulnerable people who suffer from a higher percentage of chronic conditions being, utilizing clinics that are few and far between and are more vulnerable to electrical outages. So it's a no-brainer. It makes sense. And we're just really excited about this initiative, and we're looking for additional tribal partners.
So I know you're working with some of the tribes in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And so do you go in, would you then call the tribe or the tribal chair, the health leader, the governor, and just say like, hey, we've got generators, or how would people reach out to you, or what kind of services could you provide? I know you've got Power for Health, but you also have other things as well. So what are those also?
So typically what happens is because I've been a tribal lawyer for a long time, I use my tribal lawyer network. I know a lot of people that represent a lot of different tribes. But we also, for this initial cohort for Power for Health, we were looking for geographical diversity. And we're also looking for, like clinics that serve the most people, but we're also looking for, we wanted to be spread out and cover a lot of different areas or regions of the country. And that also played a part in, selecting, which clinics are the most vulnerable. We look at their social vulnerability, their community resiliency. Those are some of the factors we suggest. And even if I happen to know either an attorney or a leader there, I just reach out, and we that's how we start the process. We start a conversation. I present them information, and then we go kind of on a data collection process. We look at their clinic and determine, is this building suitable for, solar, to be outfitted with solar panels and backup batteries. And what's great about this initiative, Susan, is it becomes the clinic's. The clinic owns it. It's their system. They're good for 25 to 30 years, and there's a myriad of benefits that accrue. Primarily what we're concerned about is the resiliency, but there's several other benefits that accrue to having these systems. The clinic benefits from reduced electricity bills. Say, for example, if your clinic here, if there happened to be an outage here in the middle of summer, if you had this system in this clinic, your system would click back on, and you could serve as a cooling center because it's hot here. Yeah. And people need to stay cool, or there are health effects and even death from not staying cool. So there's other benefits. As for your other question, some of the other things that Direct Relief does is we have what we call a safety net support program. And this is ongoing support. So clinics, there are a few requirements that have to be met for them to participate in this program, but they're basically allowed access to our online ordering system. And through that, they can order pharmaceuticals, over-the-counter medications, and medical supplies that we ship to them free of cost and which they receive free of cost. And they have access to the ordering system twice a month, and it's just our way of making sure that the clinics that serve those most in need have the supplies and the medicines that they need to do so. So that's a form of ongoing support. So sometimes we also have special donor programs. Sometimes last fall, we had a donor who donated 75 vaccination refrigerators. So I get on the phone or get on email and start saying, hey, do you need a refrigerator to store your medicines? And if they did, we sent it to them.
Those are expensive.
Yes, they
Those
are.
are not $500. Those are thousands.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I think because Direct Relief has been in this business for a long time, we have trusted donors and we also have relationships. But until recently, we didn't have very many relationships in Indian country. And that's my job, is to form those relationships and to get these resources to Indian country.
And I know you've done a tremendous job. I do want to back up. So when you were talking about like getting solar and things like that, so for and that would be so critical, because if the grid goes down or system goes down, let's say at Navajo or wherever you are in a rural area, they're going to be completely dependent on that.
Yes, indeed.
And super important. So, and then where do you get this? So is it private? Is it companies across the country, across the world that say, hey, I have an excess of solar panels or syringes, and then they call you and just say, you know what, we produce too many. We've got an excess of 500,000 syringes. Is that sort of how the network works? Or?
It's a combination of both. Well, first of all, Direct Relief is 100% privately funded. So we have very generous donors. We have a generous endowment, and we can purchase a lot of, say, the solar panels and the backup batteries we purchase with those funds. For safety net support, the medicines, over-the-counter medicines and supplies, some of those are donated by some of the pharmaceutical partner companies and other companies that we have partnerships with. So it's a combination of both.
That's pretty cool. Very important. I mean, I'm sure that's saving a lot of lives. And it definitely did during COVID.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yes, indeed. And it's really exciting to be a part of this organization that's doing such positive things in our world, but more importantly, that I'm getting this out to Indian country, and that Direct Relief is committed to doing this and committed to forming long-lasting tribal partnerships. One of the other things that strikes me about Power for Health in particular is it also contributes to tribal energy sovereignty. I mean, it's an independent, source of power that contributes to taking care and prolonging the lives of our people.
And it's so important.
Indeed.
I mean, and not having infrastructure in certain places, I can't imagine it's life-saving. Mm-hmm. If you don't have that solar and you don't have that, pretty important. And what you're doing is so important. Yeah,
and sometimes some of the clinics we work with, they have another source of power, like a diesel or some other type of power generator. And in our design, we can incorporate that into the system design. So in Power for Health, these designs for the clinics are custom because every clinic is different. This clinic might face a north-south orientation. It might have an east-west. So we have to do all that analysis work to create a custom solution for the clinic. And some clinics, we ask them what they want powered in case of a disaster, an emergency. Some of them want their pharmacies powered. Some of them want their, emergency areas powered. Some of them want their IT powered. It all depends, but we work with them to create a custom solution that works for them.
Well, and it's also a redundant system.
Yes.
So, if one goes down, which invariably, as you know, lots of times one system will go down, it's always nice to have redundancy so you have a backup and you're not scrambling and not leaving people in danger or in a lurch.
Yes, indeed. So. And when we talk to, those that run clinics, clinic directors, almost every one of them that I have talked to has a story about how they lost power and how they were scrambling to try to find a place to keep their medicines and vaccines cold. And that's very important. And when you lose those vaccines, that's thousands of dollars because they are not, they're very expensive items. So just that alone is significant.
And people that aren't in this field have no concept of, like your cooler arrives and you've got to get it into that and you've got to make sure it's refrigerated. You've got the data loggers in there and you can't lose any. Mm-hmm. You can't have any excursions. Yep. So what you're doing is so important. So I know that you're working with Native Health, so we're super excited with that. Are you working with other area nonprofits in Phoenix as well?
We're working with another clinic here in the local area on Power for Health, and we also have a relationship with the Arizona Council on Nonprofit Clinics, and building relationships with other tribes, tribal organizations, emergency response, and community-based organizations that do support work in health. So if you have not heard of Direct Relief and you want to learn more, I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to hear more and see how we can support you and the important work you're doing.
I think you do such a great job. And I think your story of COVID and being, working in law and then ending up doing this, but I don't know how important, and you're touching so many lives. I don't know.
Well, I'm still licensed to practice in Arizona. I haven't surrendered that yet, but for now, I'm loving what I'm doing, and it's, it's sometimes you pivot in life, and this has been a wonderful journey, and I'm happy to be a part of it because, I will say something. Sometimes in Indian country, just because of our history with the federal government and with colonialism, there's a lot of distrust. And when someone comes and says, hey, I want to give this to you, we're cautious, we're hesitant, and as we should be. And sometimes it takes another Native person to say, hey, this is okay. You can trust them. And, I'm happy to serve as that bridge.
I think during COVID, it was so, I remember people calling and wanting to give and, being wary, like, what are they offering? Are there strings attached? Will they actually follow through? Mm-hmm. Will it be done in time? Will you get what you really need? Yep. So. And
that was important for me. Like I said, when I told the story, is they did what they said they were going to do. And to me, when they passed that test and they did it, I knew I could trust them. And I also wanted to add is during the years of the pandemic, Navajo also had 2 wildfires near the border on the western side of the reservation. And Direct Relief came through for us then, too. They supplied us with hygiene kits for people who needed to evacuate, N95 masks, little devices that they were solar charged devices that people could use to charge their cell phones, just all the things that, people need when they can't be at home for a few days. And we do that also. Most recently, kind of locally, we helped out the White Mountain Apache tribe in New Mexico during the Salt and South Fork fires. We sent 8 pallets of supplies to them. And last month also, Hurricane Beryl went through Texas, and we assisted the American Indian Center of Houston with some of the similar supplies for the folks that were affected down there.
And you guys do a lot. I did not know you did all that.
Oh, well, it's kind of this thing where I'm always watching the news, and we have a system that we're plugged into that alerts us. So, we know a couple days in advance, we know where the storms are, and sometimes they happen spontaneously and it breaks out quickly, and then, we're scrambling. But sometimes if I'm not aware of a tribal partner in an area that's being affected by an emergency or disaster, I literally just look. I get on the internet and look, who do I know there? Who can I reach there? And most of the time, people are very responsive and thankful, for the help. There's been wildfires burning in Northern California for several weeks now, and we've been in touch with some of the tribes that are affected by this. And sometimes it's not even that the wildfire is in their backyard, it's the smoke, because the smoke lingers and stays for a long time. So for folks that have asthma, that's hard to handle. It's very hard on their system. So, you don't even have to be in the middle of it. You can be nearby and still be affected by it.
So I got a question. I know COVID, we were just talking about before we turned on the show, that COVID rates are rising. And we know that certain tribes are recommending that people wear masks again and things like that. Do you look forward and say, okay, we know COVID rates are rising. We know it's going to be flu season. We need to start thinking about what the tribes are going to need this fall, that they might need more N95s or ear loops, or they might need COVID test kits. Is that something you kind of do some forecasting, or do you wait until, is that something you would recommend people would contact you for and say, you know what, COVID's rising right now. I'm worried, like what's going to happen during COVID and flu?
Yes, I think there's some degree of that occurs at Direct Relief. I'm not directly involved in that work, but yes, I do know that when COVID broke out, we did have a big supply of N95s already on hand. So we were able to respond to that need immediately. And for example, yesterday, the World Health Organization issued a notice that the Mpox was becoming rampant in certain areas of Africa, and that it might become a major, international incident here. So I think that staying in touch and apprised of, not only international health concerns but domestic is important, and factors into being able to respond. Direct Relief has an incredibly large warehouse at its headquarters in Santa Barbara, and it's also solar panels. So,
not we walk on energy.
Right, we walk our talk.
That's good.
And we have 2 huge refrigerated rooms that we store our medicines in, and there's a whole complicated and careful process to storing these medicines, and that also when they're shipped, certain procedures have to be in place to ensure their viability when they're shipped to various places. So, yes, we do have professionals that take care of that.
I like to hear that you walk the walk and talk the talk. 'Cause I think a lot of times people say all these things are great, solar powered is great, but then they don't really do it. And I think that just shows the integrity of the organization. And I think that's so important. And but if people wanted to find out, if our listeners and our listeners across the country wanted to know more about Direct Relief and how they could work with you or find out more, would they go to the website, do Direct Relief, or would they email you? What would you suggest?
Well, to find out more information about Direct Relief, the organization, our work in the world and in the United States, please just go to www.directrelief.org. If you're particularly interested, and I'd love to have a conversation with your listeners about how Direct Relief can support them specifically, you can contact me via email. I'm at kdutcher@directrelief.org, and my last name is spelled Dutcher.
I've so enjoyed meeting you. I know I've met you obviously before today, and I think you're so genuine, and what I liked is you're so passionate about this, and you've made such a difference. I know to Native Health and to the tribes and the organizations that you've worked with, and I remember hearing some of the things that Direct Relief did up at Navajo during COVID, way before I met you, and just the incredible work and the difference in the lives that it saved. So, hats off to you all for doing such a great job.
Well, thank you, Susan. I mean, it's great to hear that, but there's so much more to be done. And thank you for having me here today, and thank you for Native Health for everything that you do. I mean, what you do here in the community, not even in addition to what you do, to address the health needs of, the urban population here in the Phoenix area, but you do so much more than that. I mean, your meal programs for preschool kids, your food pantry, your voter registration. I mean, these are the types of clinics that we want to help, because you serve a vital role for tribal communities, and I'm sure there are others out there like you who need the support of Direct Relief to keep on doing what you're doing, because you make a huge difference.
Thank you.
As well.
And I hope they reach out to you and contact you, because I know there are organizations and other urban programs and other tribal communities that could definitely partner with you.
Yes, indeed. I look forward to hearing from them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up on Native Talk Arizona, Jesse Mike will tell us about the Diné Native Plants Program. Support for KRDP 90.7 FM comes in part from Native Health, with 2 locations in Phoenix, 4041 North Central Avenue, Building C, near the corner of Central Avenue and Indian School Road, and at 2423 West Dunlap Avenue. Native Health is also located in Mesa at 777 West Southern Avenue, near the corner of Southern Avenue and Extension Road. Native Health provides primary medical, dental, behavioral health, WIC, and wellness services for the urban Native American community. For more information, call 602-279-5262 or visit our webpage at nativehealthphoenix.org. Native Talk Arizona returns after this song. You're listening to OFY by Smokey D. Palmtree.
Welcome back to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm host Lanasha Puwadi. The Diné Native Plants Program is a new program for the Navajo Natural Heritage Program under the Navajo Nation Department of Fish and Wildlife. This program focuses on collecting, banking, and growing local native plants for agency and community use. On the phone to tell us more is Jesse Mike, forester for the Diné Native Plants Program. Hello, Jesse, and welcome to Native Talk Arizona.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and your background?
Yeah, sure. Yate Shea Jesse Mike and She. Gilagana Nislan, Twitchin, Bashichin, Ado, Bagana Edashe, Twitter and Edashanala. So my name is Jesse Mike. I am the forester for the Diné Native Plants Program, located out here in Fort Defiance, Arizona. A little bit about my background is that I grew up in Saline, Arizona, which is a small town kind of in the center of the Navajo Nation. My education background is in biology, ecology, and forestry. but my passion and my primary role in the Diné Native Plants program is in botany. So that's just concerning the plant species that we have out here in the Southwest.
Oh, wow.
And that's me.
Thank you for sharing that, Jesse. And can you tell us an overview of the Diné Native Plants program?
So the Diné Native Plants program is primarily a native plant nursery and seed bank for the Navajo Nation. What we do is we advocate for native plants here for the Navajo people, and that takes the form of four main functions. So our first function is outreach and education. So we host different workshops for the Navajo people, both pertaining to plant identification and the more scientific aspects of native plants, but then also traditional uses of native plants, such as wool dyeing and basket making. Really just trying to reconnect the Navajo people with native plants in both of those aspects. Our second function is seed collection, production, and baking. So what this looks like is we go across the Navajo Nation and we collect seeds from native plants. We bring them back to our warehouse in Fort Defiance and we process them for all of our different projects. We also grow a lot of native plants to then harvest the seeds off of them. That's our seed production aspect. And then banking is just the process of storing them. Our third function is greenhouse production. So we operate a big greenhouse out here in Fort Defiance, and we grow all native plants from those seeds that we collected, and we use them for our different projects, including our fourth function, which is ecological restoration. So we know there's a lot of environmental degradation out here in the Navajo Nation, and we use the seeds and the plants that we produce to try and restore the health of these different degraded ecosystems. Right now, we're primarily focused on stream restorations up here in some of our mountains in the Navajo Nation. So that's, I know that was a lot, but that's essentially what our program does.
Well, that is so awesome, and it's so great that you have that available. And I know one of the areas that you mentioned is seed banking, collecting and banking. Do you use traditional farming methods to collect seeds?
We don't directly use any traditional methods to collect seeds. When we collect seeds, it's kind of it's more of a rigorous, systematic, kind of standardized way that we collect seeds. It's based on a national standard, so that we are collecting enough data to know the population that we're collecting from, and then also so that we're not hurting the population that we're collecting the seeds from. So we don't use any traditional methods to collect seeds. However, we do, in talking with the public and talking with different people about what we do, we have found that we have started to learn about the different ways that traditionally we would have collected and stored seeds. So it's been really interesting to learn more about that. But yeah, we don't use it directly, but that is some knowledge that we are trying to collect and gain just in talking with the different people.
And why is it important to have seed banking?
Seed banking is important for a lot of different reasons. Specifically for us, the seed bank is necessary because it provides us with this resource, essentially this library of seeds. Like I mentioned before, that we collect a lot of data with each of the seed collections that we, and so it provides us this library for us to pull seeds from for our different projects. And that's really important because research has shown that plants are locally adapted. So the plants here in the Navajo Nation, they do grow, off the reservation. They grow in these other places, but the ones growing here specifically on the Navajo Nation have a unique genetic makeup that allows them to be adapted to the, the climatic, geologic, the soils, the precipitation, the temperatures that we have here in the Navajo Nation. And so while in storing these seeds, we're also storing that genetic makeup in these different adaptations that these plants have specifically here to the Navajo Nation. And because all of our restoration happens here on the Navajo Nation, the seed bank provides us the resource to pull these collections to then grow plants, so that our plants that we plant out in these restoration sites are going to be the best adapted to those areas, and it'll allow them to have the best survivability, the best success of restoring the health of that land.
Wow, that is so great. And who can participate and receive your seeds?
So at the moment we're only collecting and producing seed for ourselves and for our own projects. Like I said, we are a relatively new program, and we're trying to figure a lot of things out about how to provide seeds for other people. And at the moment, we don't have enough seed to provide to people. But I think the goal long term, especially with our seed increase fields, is to provide enough locally sourced, genetically appropriate seed so that we can then start providing it not just to the public, but also to these bigger agencies for things like post-fire restoration, or bringing back plants after different things like mining or construction or things like that. So that's a long-term goal, but at the moment we just we can't collect enough, and we're not producing enough seed. We're still trying to figure all of that out.
Okay. And I know you also mentioned that one of the areas that you guys work on is kind of the outreach and educational aspect of it. Can you tell us more about the demonstration or informations that you guys host, like the workshops?
Mm-hmm. So it's our outreach aspect of our program. Again, it's our goal here is just to reconnect the Navajo people with native plants that are grown in their backyards, grown in their hometowns, and across the Navajo Nation. We believe that at one point in time, all Navajos were botanists. We hear about how our grandmas used to do this, or our grandpas used to be this, and all of these things, as far as like weavers and herbalists and medicine people. And really with our outreach and education, what we want people to begin saying is that I do these things. I collect this plant, for these different reasons. And so that's our goal with our outreach and education. So yeah, like I mentioned before, we host, because we don't have the expertise within our program. What we do is we bring in experts. So we'll bring in a weaver, someone who's an expert in wool dyeing, and we'll have them do a demonstration for the public on how to use natural native plants to naturally dye wool for weaving. We also brought in a person who does the traditional Navajo baskets, and teaching us all about that plant and how you use that to make baskets. We've done stirring sticks, and we've brought in people to do medicinal ceremonial uses of native plants. So it's a really cool aspect of our program. It's something that we look forward to every year. And I think the public really responds to it well, and I think I know we learn a lot, and I think the public gets a lot from it too.
Oh, yes, definitely. It sounds like they are an amazing workshop, especially for the community to kind of get involved and interested in that work. But kind of talking on that same topic, how do you get the youth interested in your work? So we, as a part of this outreach function, I'll visit schools a lot and talk about native plants. I think that's primarily how we're trying to reach the youth. What's really nice about having the seed bank in the greenhouse is that I can just take seeds, and I can take plants from our greenhouse and take all of our tools that we have
and I can bring those to schools and kind of have like a nice, like visual aids and hands-on things for them to look at and talk about, both the scientific aspect of it and also the traditional aspect of it, of native plants, and really try and get them interested that way. And I think they really enjoy it. The different grades that I've spoken to, the different youth groups that I've spoken to, I think there's a really big need for it. I think they, like I said, they have all of this kind of background information of their moms or their grandmas, or these things that they do with their parents, and so by bringing all this stuff and bringing all these plants to them directly to their classrooms, and showing them how you can make a career out of this and how this is a good thing that we all should be doing, I think it's really great. It's really fun, and I think they really connect with it.
And how has your cultural identity shaped who you are today, and has it impacted your career journey this far?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, that's kind of the driving force that's behind everything that I do, and everything we do with the program. But yeah, absolutely. My cultural identity and really, for all of us in the program, really shapes everything that we do. Everything that we do is kind of informed by everything that we grew up with, and all of the teachings that we have from our elders and from our parents, and all of these different people in our lives. And it really is it's something that we're trying to incorporate more into our program, is the cultural aspect of it. I think we have the Western scientific part of it down, and now we're trying to include more of the traditional ecological knowledge, and more of the traditional aspect into what we do, and that's why I had mentioned before about learning about these the traditional farming techniques, the traditional seed collecting, seed storage, and all of those things. That's something that we're trying to bring more into the program and have that inform everything that we do, from how we seed collect, how much we seed collect, where we seed collect, the species that we collect. We're trying to be more cognizant of those cultural teachings when we do everything that we do.
And what advice would you give to somebody who wants to enter the same field as you?
I would say if you have any interest in this, I would try and volunteer somewhere. I think there are a lot of really good opportunities to volunteer, even with our program, and try and get your foot in the door and see if it is something that you like to do. It is a really it's a hard job that we do. I know. I think on the surface it can kind of just sound like we're just out there wandering around and just smelling the flowers, and it really is. It's sometimes it's that. Sometimes we do get to smell the flowers and just kind of wander around in the forest and stuff. But really, it's a hard career, especially out here in the Navajo Nation. There aren't many jobs like this, but it's a lot of hard work. But it's a really fulfilling field that we work in. And so I would say just try and get out and volunteer, either with our program or a different program, and get some experience with, identifying plants, or with restoration techniques or seed collecting or any of these things, and really find out if this is, something that you connected with and something that you want to do. And then you should go to school for it. I think my biggest regret is that, through all of my college, I never got to take a single botany class, and I really wish I had. I think there's a lot of good degrees out there, a lot of good schools, even here in the Navajo Nation, that you can go to get into this field, and then come work for us.
Perfect. And finally, how can our listeners find more information about you, your work, and the Diné Native Plants Program, and how can they contact you?
Yeah, so we do have a website. It's kind of nested down there in the Navajo Nation Fish and Wildlife website. We have a Facebook and an Instagram where you can contact us. And then we're pretty responsive to email. So if you find our emails on any of those websites, you can just reach out to us, and we will probably email you right back.
Perfect. I'd like to thank you, Jesse, for taking the time out today to tell us more about the Diné Native Plants Program and also giving us great advice on why these initiatives are important.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Native Talk Arizona, supported by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. Audio editing by Javier Quiroga, and the executive producer is Susan Levy. And I'm host Lanasha Puwadi. We hope you tune in again next week. If you have any questions, please email us at nativetalkaz@radiophoenix.org.